We're going to spend some time talking about EGR, the sensors and the coolers. We have some real problems with EGR coolers. The EGR valve position sensor is a 3-wire sensor mounted to the valve assembly. It's 5 volts, the signal return, and the actual signal itself. So we're going to be using this to monitor the position of the EGR. And we're going to have another way to check the EGR. We have a second inlet air temperature, Inlet Air Temperature 2. It's a typical coolant sensor, 2-wire thermistor tied to the manifold. It's going to use this signal to verify EGR flow. When the EGR opens, we expect to see extra heat at the Inlet Air Temperature 2. If the heat is excessive, we know that the EGR is stuck open. If it doesn't change temperature, we know that the EGR isn't opening. We got a problem if IAT2 doesn't provide the correct information. You have the incorrect flow, and you can be getting to problems. We've had a lot of problems with sticking EGRs causing a high temperature on IAT2. So if you get an IAT2 with high temperature, look for stuck open EGR, usually caused by carbon. So we have to clean it during our annual inspections to make sure it's good and clean, stays clean. That'll help prevent some of these over temperature situations which cause it to short out, indicating high temperature. So here's where we are. We're bringing the hot exhaust gases back in through this cooler right here you see on the left. This is a round cooler. Down the bottom right you see what the cooler looks like on the inside. We're going to run exhaust gases down inside the cooler and run water, coolant, whatever you want to call it, through in there to keep the gas cool down. So we drop this gas temperature a little bit so it's not so high going back in the intake manifold. Now the early round coolers had larger tubes, and they didn't seem to fail as much as the new square ones do that came along later. The square tubes have more surface for improved cooling. That's the good news. The bad news is it sometimes fails. If the oil cooler blocks the flow of coolant, it backs up to the EGR cooler. EGR cooler and the oil cooler working together. If we get one plugged up because it's dirty coolant, we can block up, and we're going to heat up that water in the EGR cooler and destroy the wells and the metal in the EGR cooler. So we've got to have flow to keep the EGR cooler alive. This is one area we found that some people are missing on EGR coolers to go bad. So we have our water cooler coming into this side benefit over here. As you can see, that little red tube there. By the way, that tube screws on. It twists on and twists off. Don't take the bands off. So the gas comes in to the right, goes through the coolant, comes out to the left. The coolant comes in from the intake manifold and then goes out to the oil cooler. So they're in series. Oil cooler is in series with the EGR cooler. They both must be free flowing. As we said before, unfortunately, 2004 and later models often fail. They have the new square coolers. They blow out and start leaking internally. Exhaust gas and coolants mix together, makes a real mess, gets exhaust coolant into the intake manifold, which causes a lot of muck and dirt and stuff, creates white smoke and sweet smell, and the combustion temperature of the cooling system pushes the coolant out of the degas bottle cap, spills all of our coolant out. You usually can spot that pretty easy. Look at the degas bottle here. One of the things you can pick up that's fairly inexpensive, this is a Matco gasket head leak detector kit. This leak detector kit has that test fluid, which changes color in the presence of combustion gases above the water in the radiator. This is not a hydrometer. Do not pull the water up. It's the air above the water you're testing. If the fluid changes color, you have a leak, you need to go find it. Here's our system here. This is the EGR on the left and the cooler coming into it with our coolant lines all connected. There at the bottom right was what kind of deposits we get once we develop a leak in one of these coolers. Makes a real mess. Here's two of the coolant designs. The round tubes with the red centers. That's the early round ones. The one on the bottom left, that's the new current design. Much more cooling, but also more susceptible to problems. So both of these designs are there. The round one does not fail as often as the left, but that doesn't mean they don't fail. Here's a nice round one that failed. This particular one failed, they think, because the oil cooler was plugged up and weren't getting sufficient flow, but they're not sure. They wanted replacing both of them, and the problem didn't reoccur. Here's the two designs, the round one and the square one. And as you can see, The square ones are a little longer than the round ones. What you're going to see is the white smoke, usually with a kind of sweet smell of antifreeze or coolant. You're going to have missing coolant. One of the things you're going to have is a wet, gooey EGR valve. You can take it out and look at it. It'll show it to you there. When you pull it out and look at this. Now, surprisingly, this valve sticks, which causes IAT2 to be over temperature. There's your example. If you cook this best to a hard crust, it gets really hard and crusty, and you wind up having to replace the EGR. Here's where we test it. We check it. We make an adapter, bolt it in to seal up one end, cap off the other, and then see if we can pull a vacuum. Now, we were at a shop in Texas. This is 2 of the 3 bins of EGR coolers they have. They catch them up. They use an aftermarket cooler at this particular shop. They've quit using the OEM. This is the cooler they happen to use. It's called a bulletproof diesel cooler. As you can see on the far right, 5-star rating. It's $350 for a rebuilt, refurbished EGR cooler for a 6.0. That is the square type. The 2 on the left are for the 2 of them we have on 6.4s. We still have them on 6.4s. So you will get EGR coolers. You may want to look at an aftermarket cooler. This particular one comes with a lifetime guarantee. While we're talking about cleaning up carbon on the EGRs, we need to give you some information we found from one of our fleets in Washington, D.C. They did a detailed study of different additives to help them control some of the excessive buildup of carbon in their EGRs and in their turbos. They ran a test on a whole fleet of vehicles and found the things they could find that the diesel mechanic in a bottle helped them better than any other product. What they found was that this helps with after combustion carbon cleanup. That's a big improvement over what we've had in the past. So this is used not only to help get over some of the gelling, some of the cetane problems, some lost lubrication. It also helps reduce the sludge from deposits and bacteria and fungus associated with biofuels and keeping the water down to keep the biologicals from growing in the fuel. And it helps, which we were surprised to find out, with after combustion carbon. Run your own test. See if you find what they found. Compare a number of different ones. I want to encourage you to explore different things to help improve the reliability.